Shanda, you're first.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
Shanda Crystal, Purchasing and Economic Analyst. I have 3 items before the board today.
Okay.
I
The first one is an ambulance discussion.
am hoping that Christy will join us for that.
Well, do we need to go in Board of Ambulance?
Yes.
Okay.
But can we hold off and see if Christy comes?
Chris Pincock with the city.
Sorry.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh,
Not the other
There's
two Christies
already
that are
2
here.
Christies in the room.
Sorry.
okay.
Throw a third
I
one.
Which one are you looking I thought they was here.
Sorry. Correct. Christy Pincock.
Okay.
Could I move to items 2 and 3 in hopes that she'd be able to
Okay.
join us and then yes.
Now we're on the same page.
Okay. So if we can move to item 2 then, I have submitted a letter that I received from Porter's Office Products. Currently, we are under contract with them for all of our paper supplies through the end of September. And then they submitted this letter to us that are going to increase the price that we have twice over the next couple weeks. So I did pull their contract, right? This agreement will be terminated if the seller breaches contract. To me, and Brian can speak more to this, but to me, raising that much over the next couple weeks would be a breach, right? They're not willing to hold the initial price that they originally agreed to. Or we can do it with a 30-day mutual thing and be done. But to me, this violates their contract.
We had a dollar amount agreed upon.
Right? They're no longer willing to honor it.
So how come they don't have to have a 30-day out?
I submitted it to Brian for review. I don't know.
You're wondering on Porters why they don't have to have a 30-day out?
Yeah, how come they don't have to honor their price for 30 days?
I need to finish reviewing that, so I haven't gotten to that yet.
Okay.
But
Okay. So they did, they called me after they submitted the letter, and they did say they would be willing, if the county wanted to estimate what we would buy over the remainder of our fiscal year, we could buy it at the first increase, the $38.99 price. That is a $6, just more than $6 increase from our current contract price, but that they would hold it and then just deliver as needed. But I did do some quick research, just if we wanted to term the contract and have our departments free, like where do we go? So I did some quick research to do it on Amazon. You're looking at $42 to $49 a case for anything off there. Costco has it for $42, and Valley didn't respond quick enough to be in this meeting. But
Amazon Basic Multi-Purpose Copy Paper, $32.99 on Prime. Get it by April 4th.
so that one is an 8 ream packet, but it is a heck of a lot cheaper. So I'm just comparing 10 reams to
20
10
pound.
reams.
No, I found some 10 reams. In
Right,
there
but if
too.
you click on the 10, it jumps it to 42 if you buy 15.
If you buy 15.
But the
And I
8
found a
one,
pallet of paper.
yes,
If we buy a pallet of paper, it gets a lot cheaper.
yes. And Costco does the same thing if we want to do a pallet. But where do we put it is the question.
So I guess how much paper do we go through?
700 reams a year,
Right.
roughly, right?
Right,
What's
so
a
we're
pallet?
looking at
$1,700 for a pallet.
48. How many is on a pallet?
That's what I'm pulling up right now. Let's see, this pallet, buy it by the pallet. Oh, where did it go? Oh, here we go, pallet. So we have
120?
universal copy paper, 25 box, 10 reams per carton, 40 cartons per pallet, $1,743.
So 40 cartons on a pallet
So let's see what that is.
10 reams per,
box.
so what's that, 40 times 10?
43 divided by 40 is $43 a box right now for about a pallet. And this is the expensive stuff. This is the fancy paper.
So my initial review is if we can hold them for 30 days, fantastic. We're going to get a great deal. If we can't hold them for 30 days on that, then I would like to terminate the contract and just give the departments freedom to purchase wherever. A lot of the same places are going to run into the same supply chain issues and price increases. that Porter's is. So then I would just like to give them the freedom that as they need it, as they have storage for it, that then for the rest of this year, they're just free to purchase from the best location they can find. But
Yeah.
I didn't know if we'd be able to hold them for Porter's for 30 days.
Well, let's see here, you have,
I don't know, it just bothers me that we sign contracts
yeah.
and then people
we
just say, well, no, I'm not gonna honor them. I mean, what's the use of a contract?
Well,
You have the
especially when they
contract,
give you notice after the fact.
Shannon, do you have the contract?
Price increase was February 1 and they tell you March 28th. It's a little ridiculous.
So you have,
When was this?
wow, you could buy a truckload? I wonder how much a truckload is. I'm just saying, it has an option on Amazon, it says truckload,
I don't know if we
seriously.
have that storage at Road and Bridge.
We're gonna start selling.
Here's, again.
We're just gonna move some salt, Kyle.
Yep, one pallet, 40 cases, 8.5 by 11, 10 ream case per, for $1,536 for the pallet. So, I mean, when you start looking at it this way, if we just buy it under, you know, you're at $38
I
a,
might know where we can store a pallet or two. Where they used to do the holding of the prisoners over behind the elections, in between the Sally Port and elections, there are 3 holding cells in there
That aren't used
that
anymore.
really aren't used. In fact, Julie and I are gonna go back there and look to see if we can put some of the new equipment that we're gonna get for elections, and then talk to you about moving some elections equipment back there. But they use 1 of those out of 3, is what I've been told. I don't know. Dan's here, he knows. Is there room back there?
There's a little bit of room, but I can't tell you my office. My office is right below there, and I know they do get used.
Yeah?
And there's room down in the tunnel too, you can throw it right in the elevator and bring stuff up.
So you're gonna have departments pay for it and mark it? Or how are you gonna?
well, I'm just saying, I mean, the main thing is with this, that I was getting at when I started looking at this, is the contract price is increasing faster than other prices and other stuff's going on. So if they're gonna do this in the contract, just cancel the contract and we'll just look at other procurement options right now. I mean, because if that's what's happening, I mean, I just don't see why do we keep a contract then, and we'll just go out and the procurement individuals that were here yesterday, I'm sure they probably know where paper is being bought on a statewide level. Where are they getting theirs? And it was funny, the 3 places they said for office stuff, they had a contract with Staples, they had a contract with
Office Max?
Office Max and somebody else. State procurement people came yesterday. It was an interesting conversation, just how the entire state buys things and where they buy it from and how the pricing goes and what they do. So, and they're all state procurement bids, so.
Right. We can just piggyback and go.
Right? Yep.
I can
Kill it.
contact Porter's. I don't think they can, I mean, there's nothing here that says they can change the price.
Let's have the conversation. I mean, there's gotta be a reason to have a
Right.
contract.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't wanna give anybody a hardship either,
Yeah.
but they'll come into us for a different reason then.
Yeah.
But anyway, let's hold off on that one. I mean, let's see what Brian gets,
Okay.
and then bring him, we'll talk about it after that.
Okay, so on the letter, though, right, in retrospect, right, they want to change, well,
They've already changed the price.
Yeah, they're already billing it. So that's what I'm saying, is if they're already gonna bill it, I would just say terminate it.
Can they just give us credit for the difference of what we paid?
Right.
Because they should at least provide prior notice, I would assume.
See if
Not
it,
knowing what the contract says.
see the last time it was
Have we
billed.
had purchases since they've raised the price?
so, right, all the departments just go directly to Porter's, so it's possible.
I know that Julie ordered some yesterday.
Oh, okay,
So then,
okay. So then
you
I'll
just said it's appropriate, we should ask for a credit if we've already paid for whatever Julie might have ordered,
Anybody else?
and then terminate the contract after
We could
that.
terminate it immediately if
Yeah.
we wanted to, based on that price increase. But I don't know if the commission would want me to reach out to Porter's and talk to him about this, or see what.
I mean, for every
I would just-
courthouse, it's one thing, but for us.
I would just terminate.
Areas like.
If they're already raising it and they're already billing and they're already doing that, just terminate.
Well, that's my only thing is, if we've already paid for Julie, if she used her credit card for it, we got this notice after the fact, so I would fight for the credit on Julie's to give us the the contract price and then terminate it after.
Yep.
I think she only bought a box or two to send out mailers for the
Oh, all right. I thought it
upcoming
was a big
election.
purchase.
No, it wasn't a big purchase. It was just,
Be done with them then.
Terminate the contract. Motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we terminate the Portage contract as is currently in place for paper.
Have a motion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I'll work with Brian to get that done.
Cool, thank you.
Okay. So I have Christy with the ambulance now. Do we want to go into that, or do we want to do the update?
Either way, she can come up for
Okay.
that. I mean,
Mr. Chairman, I move that we enter into the Board of Ambulance.
have a motion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are now convened as the.
Hello.
Hello.
Good morning.
Christy, do you want to give your full name and title, please?
Christy Pincock. I'm the office manager for the Pocatello Fire Department.
Great. So a couple of weeks ago, the ambulance department came before the board with some questions about switching debt collection services. And out of that meeting, we came out with 3 different questions that we needed to research. One of them was whether or not we needed to combine the ambulance debt services with the county debt services. And the second, if we were going to be required by Idaho code to bid. And then the third is whether or not to add that fee that is charged by the collection agency, if the county wanted to cover that, or if we wanted to pass it along to the individual. So to start with number 1, on whether or not we need to combine the two, Brian and I did our research, and the ambulance district is completely separate. While the board is the same, they are a complete separate entity from Bannock County, and we won't need to combine any of that as far as bidding requirements go to make purchases moving forward. So those are 2 separate entities. The second one on whether or not we were required to bid, Christy did some great legwork for us and got us a lot of numbers over the last 5 years, so we could kind of look at the dollar amounts that we're turning into the collection agency, and then what is actually getting collected, right? What is our actual cost going to be? And on average of the last 5 years, it is just over $19,500 that we've paid in collection fees to companies over the last 5 years. The highest of those years being just over $25,000. So none of those amounts are going to reach bid limits just yet, so we would not be required to. If the board or the ambulance district felt like they could get a better deal or wanted to see what was out there, by all means, we could go ahead and bid this. I did a little bit of research and found that there are several agencies statewide that do bid their debt collection services. So if it's something we wanted to do, we have stuff that we can pattern after, and we could go ahead, if we wanted to go ahead and bid out those services if we wanted to see what was out there. The third then that we wanted to have a discussion on was that pass along. The percentage on the fee. Our current company, and Christy, correct me if I'm wrong, the current company that we have doesn't allow us to pass that to?
Our current contract with the company is a traditional collection method, and they receive 1/3 of anything collected. That company, we've not asked them if they would offer the public agency add-on instead of. We're just looking at the current contract we're at. We are currently with MRS, Medical Recovery Services. We had been contacted by CBP, which is another collection agency. They were the ones that brought forth the information about the public agency, in which they would add the fee on top. They have also are also offering to us traditional collection, in which they would charge us after a 30-day free pre-collect is what they call it. They would offer a 23% fee to us. And so at this time, what we're, I think, really looking at is, does the board want to see a traditional collection process for the ambulance service, or to use the public agency for the collection process, so that we know which? We would like to present a new contract with CBP to you guys. We just don't know which of the 2 contracts would be preferred.
And when we had this discussion before, we talked a little bit. These are people that can't pay, so we're gonna add, I mean, it's a car loan deal to me. You know, paycheck loans, and I have a tough time trying to, I don't know, milk people more than what I feel's good.
But So then it goes back to almost an indigent program at that point in time where the county is then asked to pay. Do you know what the county's portion of those fees would be on the collection fee that we're talking about? Do you have any kind of ballpark figure for that?
Well, right now, with what we found out, as Shanda was saying, that we're paying about 20,000, well, 19,500.
Okay, that's what that is.
That's what we
Okay.
paid as a fee. So that's a third of what the collection agency has been able to collect after we turn it to them. Our internal collection efforts don't always receive the same attention that a collection agency does. So,
Yeah, no, so, go
Quick
ahead.
clarification, we're not paying the fee.
We're just not
We're just-
receiving.
Right, it's offset. We should collect, say, 100,000, they're keeping that portion.
They're
So we're
keeping
not
20.
paying it, it's
Right.
just, we're writing off that much for.
Okay, which that,
When we-
I'm with Ernie on that one there.
when we turn an account to collection within the district, we consider that a write-off at that point. The account is written off. Anything that's collected comes back to the service. We deposit it through the county. And so it really is reducing how much we've written off. And so we probably, we're writing off about, right now we're about 12% is what we're sending to the collection agency. We did discuss last time that there are some of those that we would like to start presenting to you guys to ask for more of an indigent service write-off. We've already identified the deceased patients that are unable to collect, that we would be presenting them. I'm still needing to get with Christy to have that process outlined. Some of those right now are having to go through the collection process because that is our only mechanism of having a write-off for our service.
Terrell, how will, like, the deceased person in the indigent circumstance work with the new legislation that's going on?
There is none. The only thing that there would be for like indigent would be in the deceased is we pay for the body and then we would eat the cost. If they could be billed for Medicaid or Medicare, it would be billed, and if not, then there would not be there is no indigent, then it's gone. So the whole thing it comes back to is, yeah, it would just be a write-off. I mean, I don't see how else you would do that.
We would not be presenting it to you as a write-off option until we have exhausted any insurance options out
Yeah.
there and tried to receive any available resources for it. So that's kind of a separate thing
Yeah.
on there, but with respect to the collection agency, our current agency contract, we have a 33% fee. We have a contract I could present that would reduce that fee to 23%, what the collection agency would take, and that's with switching agencies. And then the second option with that same agency is receiving the 100% and then adding the fee on to the patient, which it sounds like you are not
I'm not
in favor of, but I'm not sure.
A lot of times you're not getting any more blood out of a turnip. I mean,
Absolutely.
there's just nothing there anyway.
So what do they add on? What percentage do they add on to the?
They actually add 30% onto the fee, so it can be quite costly to the individual.
And how long do you wait before you send something to collections?
30 days?
Well, there is Idaho statute that requires that we keep an account in-house for at least 120 days before it can be considered delinquent. I believe it's 120 days. I'll double check. We have our processes set up so that we can't send it to a collection agency before that time period. We have those checks and balances in there.
Okay.
So how many end up going to collections? This was something after our last conversation I was just thinking about. What do those numbers look like?
Well, we're turning, last year we turned about 12% of our total amount billed out. So we're billing out $3 million. We're turning 12% of that. So
How many of that was actually collected upon?
very little, because as we can see, the fee we paid, a third of it was the 19.5. So if you round that to 20, they're collecting maybe about 60,000 of that. So the amount that is collectible is actually pretty low.
I just,
And last year was one of their better years, but it's about like 25-27%
So
that they
they're-
actually
They're
collect
collecting about 25% of what we turn
of what
over.
turnover.
And we're turning over, what'd you say, 12%?
12% of free, so we're turning anywhere from about 350 to 400,000 in the total year.
Okay. Well, and has that number gone up every year? Because I had a meeting yesterday with Chief O'Hearn, and he showed me what the ambulance calls have been, and we're on track this year to beat what we did last year by a substantial amount.
That amount has, honestly, it has varied. If you look at it, it's not
It doesn't
straight-
correlate directly?
It does not correlate directly. You know, a lot of that can correlate to whether we've had turnover in our staff, because then it's training of getting our staff to where they have that time to not only send out the bills and bill insurance, but then they have time to do the collection internal process. And so I think that when you look at how it's varied, that probably has impacted just as much. Call volume definitely has an impact because the staff number has more overall capacity to produce.
this is gonna sound really dumb, but as I do the math on $3 million, 1% is $30,000. And if we're only collecting 60%, we have 2% loss then on business. So then what is the effort that we're actually putting in to collect $60,000? And so sometimes you have to look at efficiencies and effect. I mean, I can imagine you are very busy and slammed, and some of this stuff is it something that we, I mean, I hate to say this, but when we look at efficiencies and effectiveness of what we're doing, are we really being efficient and effective? Are we trying to hit a 3-point basketball shot, or are we trying to hit a three-point field goal in football? That's really what we're looking at. And so if you're spending this, if we're going to spend this much time and effort, is it really worth the money that we get back? Especially if most of the people are indigent anyway, or are going to be in that. I mean, do we just say, hey, here's the thing, take it out of the account, whatever you can get out of it? But I don't see most of these people in a socioeconomic class that are ever going to pay. And as a taxpayer, how do we make it more efficient to where your guys' office is really, it just hits the 120 days instead of turning it into collections? There's a good faith effort to try and collect, and if it's not, you just put it in a write-off pile and go. If like I said, if you're only collecting $60,000 out of $3 million in billings, it's 2%.
Well, I was going down a little different path when you said that based on our collection efforts, we have a better success rate if we can get to them.
Well, and that's what I mean. Is like I don't know if sending it outside is really like you're going to do any
I'm
better.
wondering if we can look at our processes to maybe pick up that 1 or 2%.
What I was trying to say is once it hits, sometimes it takes hitting a collection agency and that threat of it going on their credit report before somebody will make a payment. We have phone called, tried to talk to them, sent all of our correspondence to them, and we don't get a response. But you know, as soon as that letter comes from a collection agency, there's that payment.
We have this wonderful thing called the civil deputies in the sheriff's office. There's nothing like having that showed up and mailed on or posted on your front door. I'm just saying.
Well, just in our discussion here, if this other group's come down, 7% from what we're currently paying,
It's a 10%
10%.
decrease
then
if we present
just
that other
let's look at a
contract.
contract
Yeah.
there and
Yeah, and I would say don't add the fees. Let's just, I'd
Okay.
rather get,
Stick with
Well,
traditional collection method, and again, they're also offering that 30-day, what they're calling a free pre-collect. So the first 30 days that it's in their office, that they're sending out correspondence, they're not taking a fee, so it is the 100% for 30 days, and then after that, they start keeping 23% of it, is what they have offered, and I can get that formalized in a written contract and send it over to legal to review.
Well, and again, that's just kind of my thing is look at the time and effort that we're putting into it from your office. And that's the whole thing is if we're going to spend $100 to get $10 back, why are we doing that? But at the same time, be mindful of it. I was going to ask you too, you live in the city of Pocatello, don't you? Correct? You're Chubbuck, but you're in the county. So
Yes.
as a taxpayer, what do you think we should do?
I have worked for the ambulance service for a lot of years, and I have actually always been a proponent of sticking with the traditional collection method. I feel that ambulance service is an emergency service, and it is something that, it's that an unexpected bill. You weren't expecting to go by ambulance, it's that bill that you weren't paying. And so again, that there is that indigent, maybe not even indigent, it's just that surprise expense. And so if you are struggling to pay that, I don't know that you want to add the additional fee onto there. Then it's hard to look at it then from the business side of it and the revenue side, and then you wonder, well, should we do that? And so that was really the reason we presented both. We wanted to have that decision come to you guys as to how it should go.
That's what I was getting at.
Yeah.
Was, I mean, really, I get it, you know, but at the same time, is there other methods? Like I said, we look at other things when we talk of property taxes and everything else, and if people don't want to pay their bills, then they get to come talk to the Board of County Commissioners about why they're not paying their bills. And if people don't want to pay their ambulance bill, why aren't we doing that? Just not, they don't collect or don't whatever, you know?
We have 3 meetings this afternoon.
We got 3 of them, and so that's what I'm saying, is there's some of these, is that maybe the process and how we're collecting this is not just send it to the collection agency, but it's something that we look back, especially in the indigency office. I mean, we have people that are indigent and we pay their medical bills, they're on payments for the next 25 years.
And we do recommend that anybody who is struggling look to see whether they qualify for the indigent process and encourage them to go through that. And but we do not currently have any hardship methods that we can offer to our ambulance patients other than if they go through the indigent process.
Okay.
Okay.
Think about
Okay,
I'm good
I'll
with
come
the
back
direction.
at another meeting with the traditional contract to present to change companies and absolve with MRS so that we can reduce the fee amount and then get the 30-day free in there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Christy and I will continue to work together to monitor, to make sure that once we get closer to that bid limit, that then we would go out to bid for the next round. But right, for the foreseeable future, we'll be just fine.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Christy.
Motion to go back.
Mr. Chair, make a motion that we exit the Board of Ambulance.
We have a motion. All in favor, say aye.
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 Item number 3. A quick review of this week's procurement update. We have added, we're looking for a grant project manager for the emergency services for the HRF that we have. 2 of them, hopefully 3 projects that we will get going on here pretty quick. So that should be coming before the board here in a couple weeks. The HVAC project, excuse me, out of the jail is moving right along. They had a pre-bid conference meeting last week, and there were no questions received from that. So they are looking to bids to be due in a couple weeks there on April 11th. The Historical Museum, again, is moving right along. The addendum number 2 was issued with the architectural services included in that. And again, no questions were received on that. So they are moving forward with a closing date of April 11th as well. Both of those are on the same day. The chemicals were ordered and have arrived, and both companies are aware of how we'll move forward for the rest of the year, and they do appreciate the understanding of the board and the ability they have to compete on further needs that we might have as the year rolls through. So we're good on that one. The Medical Bay Renovation, again with supply chains being super volatile. We have ordered all of our materials that we need for that project for each one of those different options that we have, but we don't anticipate those coming in till end of April, give or take, before we'll be able to start that project, hopefully early May. But we do have it all ordered. We're just waiting for things to arrive. And that is all I have for this week.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mike.
This is going to be a hard act to follow. Commissioners, Mike Jaglowski, Bannock County Engineer. Here to visit with you a little bit about the DEQ grant for groundwater quality, and specifically seek either concurrence on direction or further direction with respect to members within working group meeting frequency, staff reporting preferences, and being a work session, working meeting, anything else that may come up. That's there. So, next steps. We have the grant, and in our scope of work, we talk about forming a working group. And the working group really isn't defined. I mean, you could say it's loosely defined with participants within the Bannock County incorporated and unincorporated area on that. Initially, the working group looked something like 13, 15 different people that comprised Bannock County, City of Chubbuck, City of Pocatello, City of Income, various agencies like the Health District, IDEQ, and IDWR, and some ISU people, some different people in there. Looking at that a little bit, in my mind, it seems a little cumbersome once you have that many people in the middle of it, and so through different conversations and different thoughts, it looked like it may be worth moving that down into fewer people and maybe targeting different groups and perhaps having agencies, if it makes sense, to have them weigh in when appropriate, when it crosses into their specific mission statement on that. And so that's really kind of my recommendation is to let's move that down to something a little bit smaller, something that's more manageable. Part of the grant, we do have a facilitator to help to take all the different ideas of a larger group and kind of bring that down into workable discussions, and then move that into a place where it's closer to digestible, if you will, policies that could be recommended to different jurisdictions throughout within the county and within the municipalities within the county, specifically the three that I had mentioned earlier.
I like group size of 7 to 9.
Well, and the problem, I started reading back, I went back on the grant application, and for some odd reason I didn't remember reading the scope of work and potential outcomes and things that are there. And the thing that kind of bothers me is, again, this is the Portland Valley Water Group that's, again, back trying to get the county to pass ordinances that are restrictive for property rights and growth. And when you talk about it, it comes back and it says, in their scope of work in Bannock County, 5-acre minimum lot size is required for lots, individual well septics. However, septic drain fields are only required with at least 100 feet from the drinking well, which means they can be within 500 feet depending on subsurface depth, in addition to and so forth. I'll paraphrase. Through this working group, we will develop recommendations for septic system policy modifications for each jurisdiction and all this other stuff. I have a very hard time. This is a DEQ grant for water issues, not for subdivision ordinances, rules, and regulations. The other thing is I have a very hard time with them wanting to have a working group to develop septic and water system rules, recommendations, and upgrades. Again, they come back into another thing for their deliverable. Is partnering agencies will develop specific draft modifications to septic system policy and or sewer line infrastructure, along with plan for implementation of each jurisdiction. In addition, we will develop draft recommendations and state code changes. This is where I have a problem with this. We already have that manual. It's called the Septic Technical Guidance Committee that gets together by the state, and they're the ones that put those recommendations together. The other thing is, this is a way that the DEQ is irritated because the legislature will not give them free carte blanche to just go do whatever they want to do. This legislature has a very nasty habit of, when we start passing different rules and regulations outside of the standards set down by the state, that they'll just throw the hammer down, and we've watched it with building code and road rules and regulations and other things that go into effect. And so as I went back and was reading after we put this forward, I'm seeing that the outcome of this group is not to actually talk about what are we going to do to increase infrastructure and to actually do things that are smart growth, productive to property rights, that allow people to actually do things and be productive. This is, again, the same thing that I've had delivered to me 4 times from this group of the DEQ and some individuals in our community that are a very loud minority want to have jurisdiction over things that they don't have jurisdiction for. And they want the county to get involved and pass ordinances in things that we don't have jurisdiction over, and we're not there. We're a land use group. That's what our job is. DEQ and IDWR, they're the ones that deal with these two issues. And if they want these specifically done, then they need to go to those issues. And that's where, when I look at this deliverable about what they want, if I'm going to appoint a board for what they want their deliverables, I'm going to put 5 to 7 people on it, and there's going to be, if there's 7 people, 5 of them are going to be civil engineers, one's going to be an environmentalist, and one's going to be a hydrologist. Because that's what they're asking for, is they're asking for a technical manual for policies and rules and regulations. And if you're not, and furthermore, I don't know how you would override a specific state technical manual that's outlined. It's 375 pages that's stamped by a professional engineer. Idaho code forbids any non-engineers from making rules and recommendations of engineering. Correct, Mike?
Absolutely.
So I don't know what we're going to do here other than waste a bunch of time and effort of staff and money. And as I went back and read that source of outcome, I thought the outcome for what this grant was specifically was to partner agencies for recommendation. But when we say, and we'll also develop recommendations for state code changes and other things.
Feels like overreach to me.
Just a little bit. And if I would have caught that when we applied for the grant, I wouldn't have applied that. Partnering agencies will develop specific draft modifications to septic system policy and/or sewer line infrastructure, along with plan for implementation in each jurisdiction. We have that, and again, this is the same issue. The deliverable needs to be: how do we develop smart plans for growth, to protect private property rights, to encourage septic systems and water. I mean, we want to encourage, if you can hook into a sewer system, by all means, that's what we want. We want those things to occur. But this is the same exact goopity-gop that I've had 5 times now, and all it is, well, now we just can't get you because we can't allow, so let's form a committee and get a bunch of people and waste a bunch of taxpayer dollars so we can go in and form some really restrictive covenants and rules and regulations and have overreach of the government. This feels like the last week I spent in the legislature dealing with, honestly, sorry, this is a little bit of, come on, we're the county, we're smarter than the state here, come on, let's do this. But I don't see why that deliverable, what exactly is that deliverable, so what to the county, and how does that benefit people? How do you override state guidance? How do you expect the county to step into a role that we're not authorized by the state? The DEQ has the power and authority to fine anybody and press criminal charges if they blatantly degrade groundwater through to improper systems. That's in their purview. Me and you went and we looked at that. Why are we involved? That would just...
May I?
Go right ahead. Sorry, you caught me in a bad one, man.
I don't know if we need to find an octagon or something and step into it for a little bit, but Commissioner, well stated, right? I mean, there isn't anything, I think anyone would disagree with that. Let me draw your attention to recommendations. I think it's the obligation of the working group to produce recommendations that could be considered, right? And perhaps there's guidance, perhaps there's guidelines, perhaps it's policy, different things. Some of the policies that I know myself and a couple other people have brought up is let's put together some policy that looks at how do we eliminate existing older systems.
Yes.
Let's put together some kind of means and methods and funding sources of being able to do that. Let's see what we can do. Another one that I had down here that we talked a lot about is fixing older sewer systems. Commissioner Moser and myself visited a couple times an old sewer system that's more like a rapid infiltration system that gets into a sewer pipe, and then where does it go? I could never find out where it went. So it went to the ground because it wasn't evaporating, right? And wasn't coming to the ground. It wasn't coming up over the street. So that's a policy that makes a lot of sense. I mean, we're fixing brick and mortar, low hanging fruit type of stuff. Another thing that we kind of that we brought up is, a long-term program to eliminating sewer systems, existing septic tanks. Because really, the thought experiment, if you were to go through that, let's say we develop the rest of this county in 5-acre lots. Let's just say, for example, guess what? The sewer systems, those septic tanks, which are legal, and everybody thinks a 5-acre lot is the best way of doing it from whatever data they have, but let's assume that it's perfect and it's accurate. Those septic tanks are going to be there for 100 years. They'll be there for 50 years, and they start polluting the aquifer sometime around 5 to 7. Some can argue 2 years, but they start polluting the aquifer pretty quickly. And I think that is some of the things we need to look at. It's not land size. It's not hampering the development and division of land. It's what guidelines that we can look at to be able to take the existing systems out, come up with long-term ideas, thoughts, and policies to help do this over the long-term period of time, provide design guidance, so when it does become time for someone to connect to a sewer system, there's septic tanks in their front yard instead of sitting in their backyard, 10 feet below, the foundation of a house or something, making it really difficult to connect. I like the idea of smart growth. We've talked about that several times before, Commissioner. And this is right within the middle of smart growth. I don't want to say policy, but guidelines and topics, things that we want to try to look at, but implement some of those things on those type of deals. I appreciate the fact of you talking about a smaller committee. I think that makes a lot of sense. Populating that committee with as many experts and environmentally minded people and technology minded people. I think that's a great idea. From time to time, if we do need to reach out to outside technology experts, then we do that to gain knowledge so that we can make a recommendation for something that could be considered. To me, it's foolish to, and this is a point that I absolutely agree with, is that it's foolish to come up with a recommendation of a policy or recommendation of a guideline or a rule, something like that we all know that may not even be considered. That is a waste of time.
Well, and the other thing too is it's actually forbidden for DEQ to lobby legislature. That's why they don't do that. Legislature, the DEQ itself, they cannot. There's a rulemaking process in how they do that. They don't get to do that. And when I see stuff like that says we want to make recommendation change for legislative action, that's the step around. And we've seen this with DEQ a lot. I've had a lot of conversations with other agencies and people, is they want to do something, and so they're trying to get other groups to lobby on their behalf, and that really bothers me sometimes, because it's, again, this is how we end up with
Silly.
This is how we end up with silly things from the state, is when local agencies start thinking that they will supersede and do things outside of their purview. The state legislature comes back and they ratchet the screws down, and it really makes everybody's life miserable, because then the state comes in and changes your building code, and they change everything that may be positive in your area, because one area starts increasing so much, the legislature pulls it back for everybody and says, no, this is the standard level and it will not change from this. And that's what we don't want to do, is lose local control, and this is one of your ways that you start losing local control.
Can we modify the charter of this group that you're putting together? Because I understand Commissioner Tovey and the concern about overreach and DEQ stepping in. I get that, and I appreciate that. But at the same time, I agree with you that we can't be afraid to ask the questions. How do we manage some of the problems that we have creatively? So,
agreed, and that's the whole thing. That's what I thought that this group was going to be, was that we were going to come back and talk about smart growth initiatives and plans, a 10-year plan for infrastructure. How do we encourage infrastructure improvements? How do we encourage people to hook on? That's what I thought that this group went.
And that's my point. Can we change this charter to refine
I don't see where it says that we can't.
Okay.
It doesn't specifically say that we do.
Well, it just says in your deliverables. It's just how, so the deliverable is the agency draft modifications for septic system policy. Now, Now, I think you can work inside that deliverable. I don't think we'll be working to try and change state codes, because that's just a problem into itself. But your whole partnering agencies develop specific draft modifications to septic system policy. Okay, so let's talk about septic policy. Septic policy is we are going to follow IDAPA rules and Idaho code and the state septic manual, the sewage manual as a technical guidance manual. But then we want to encourage hooking onto sewer lines and not charging $40,000 in a hookup fee for one house, which is then the Board of Health, Commissioner Moser and those guys, under state law, that's not how we encourage
That's not
good
reasonable.
environmental
And that's-
stewardship.
And that's, exactly. And those are, that's
Did you go
part of
back
it.
to what you said, though? The old systems and stuff like that.
Yes.
What's the method, how can we update and improve?
Well,
So
that's
I
something
think
that
the
we want
parts
to
of it,
explore.
Like you said, we can figure that out.
So Commissioner Moser, that's a great question. Those are the things that we have to seek out and we have to explore. And it's always been my mind, if I look at this from like a business sense, the county has their lane that they need to stay in. And their lane is enumerated, right?
Mhm.
We try to do that very well, okay? DEQ has their lane, and that's quality. They need to stay in their lane. And once they are able to do that very well, maybe some of this helps out. SPIF, or Southeast Idaho Public Health, they have their lane. IDWR, they have their lane. But we all have to try to, I don't want to say come together, but we all have to try to work in a way that we're preserving what we're doing within our lane and helping or observing what's happening in the other lane. It doesn't say that we have to do it. And it's like, I agree. Initially, and I will take full ownership of this, initially, that's exactly what I presented, is that we want to look at everything.
Mhm.
And I was looking at it on the other side of the coin. No, it doesn't specifically say smart growth, or it doesn't specifically say this is what we're doing, but it doesn't exclude it. And to me, that's where the reasonable brick and mortar type of solutions, come into play with this. It's not, let's put something and present it to the different jurisdictions that can't be passed or won't be passed because it's outside of our lane, but it's something that we can, use water quality as a guideline at making decisions, further decisions, whether that decision is helping someone make good design decisions, like placing their septic tank and drain field in the front of their house, so when the sewer does come by, and it will, it may not happen overnight, but it will come by, it's easily implemented and you can hook into it. And typically right now, wells go in front because there's a big machine that comes out and drills the well. Those go out in front and septic tanks go in back. That's traditionally and historically the way that wells and septic tanks go into just about every county that I've ever tried to develop in. On that, switching that around, it's like, to me, that makes perfect sense to try to do something to implement that. Maybe some of the guidelines is, there's opportunities, not maybe through any one of the jurisdictions, but perhaps through a collective opportunity of the developers pre-designing, how a sewer system would go into their subdivision if a sewer system becomes available at the front of their subdivision or at a place. A couple things that I was involved in professionally in the middle 90s was, and that makes me feel really old, but in the middle 90s was in Ada County, just outside, just west of Boise, where they had a huge amount of pressure of having subdivisions coming in, subdivisions that looked a lot like city subdivisions, but they weren't initially sewered, and they took steps to be able to get to the place where they could sewer. Now that came pretty quick because there is a huge push and a lot of funding behind it to get sewer into those different areas. But when it did, they were able to connect pretty quick. In so much that some of the subdivisions had dry lines in it, some of the subdivisions had already designs and locations for those sewer systems to go, all of which had easy opportunities where they're switching the plumbing underneath their house or opening a valve and the sewer starts running out the front of the house instead of the back. And I think those are some of the things that need to be more explored. I don't want you to think that I came to this board and was saying, trying to say something different than what was on the
You're fine.
than what was on there. And I couldn't agree with you more, Commissioner Tubby, but I think some of the solutions to that is to, as being a part of the board, and I would really like to be a part of this board, is to get something, instead of having something that may not be passed, start looking at things that are closer to low-hanging fruit. What can we do now to reduce the increments, and then put in policy or put in guidance to be able to continue that effort throughout time? Because at the end of the day, and I think I've said this before, at the end of the day, everybody likes clean water. That's
Yeah.
what we want. But we can't. The county can't. We don't have that authority to say, this is what you have to do when you're dividing land.
Well, that's why I say, if we can go back and give us a charter of how you think this group could operate that meets the discussion we've just had, I think if we can have something like that, then I'm okay if we go forward with that.
Well, my other question, and this is something that came up earlier this week, is matching funds. I see Pocatello's committed $2,000 in actually staffing time, and that the city of Pocatello, or Chubbuck, $1,200 in staffing time. How are we covering the matching? 'Cause
That is a great question. The
we
match is always,
didn't meet matching on another grant, and now we're looking at funds
right.
to meet matching, so that's
So
gonna be a key item for me.
Right, no,
I figured that would be a,
that's a great question. The total project budget is $20,500. The grant that we have is for $15,000. City of Pocatello has committed a minimum, I believe, of $2,000. City of Chubbuck was $1,200, and then we are committing the balance of that in staff time to make that total amount. There's been no, we've never thought of committing actually hard dollars to be able to do this. We've always committed staff time. In my mind, I'm probably about a third of the way there, just working on it from the time this grant started.
Okay, so in timekeeping, how are we logging these hours so that we're,
Okay, so that's the third question
Covering this.
in the agenda item here was staff reporting methods. In my mind, there's two reporting methods. One is financial. Okay, we've got to solidify that just, as quick as we can. Let me try this again. We want to solidify that as quick as we can so that we're not only collecting stuff from other jurisdictions, but we're also collecting our stuff so that we're able to report that at the end of the grant to that amount, if not more. The other reporting effort is what type of reporting would be appropriate for this group. My thought is once a month, a report, maybe something like what Shanda just did. Look, this is what we've done, this is where we're going, these are the different things, guidance, direction, help us guys, type of thing.
Do we have Nova time that we could use for the tractor?
You have to use Nova time for your labor.
Right.
So just like you did with the RV park,
Mhm.
just do the exact same thing. If we need to set up a different grant code, get hold of Kedron, she can set that up for you. But any time that county employees spend will have to be done through Nova time.
so how do we do that with, like, the city of Pocatello and the city of Chubbuck?
The other cities, what they'll do is they'll provide, I think you've got a form in here that showed, like what Wes was talking about the other day, a sign-in sheet or some sort of documentation showing that the hours that they've worked. They may have I'm not sure, I don't know what how either of the cities account for their time, but we would just see what their system is. If they've got paper time sheets that they have time, as long as it's signed by the employee and supervisor, that's golden. And then they would just give us the rate of pay and the benefits, and then we would just calculate the dollar amount. Michelle can help you with that.
So what I was kind of thinking is not only handing them the sheet, but also providing a contact that Michelle could visit with and give them, let them know what our criteria is, so when they do report to us and we do have this stuff put together,
So
we have the.
But I don't want to add a burden on Michelle that she's having to contact. If they're contacting her to give her information, but I don't want her having to get a hold of them and
No, that's
and
very
run
good.
stuff down.
No, I agree with that. Michelle's burden as it is already, and let's try to lighten that and make this as close to, it's not going to be seamless, but let's try to approach that, right?
But if you'll get with Michelle, she can give you everything you need and then supply that so that you can give it to whoever she's going to work with, and she'll have everything you need.
So if you'll actually come up with like 7 names,
Well, what I would like to do is I would actually like to have, for this, I just don't want names. I want to actually, okay, if we're going to have a board, have a,
With CBIC, we had
an
them submit
application, I want to put it in,
applications.
but I want to go back to it, because like I said, what they're asking to do, this is a very technical thing. This isn't a, hey, we're going to talk about this, we just want you to do this, that, or whatever. This is you're starting to make questions and recommendations dealing with, are we talking about soil type? Are we talking about gravel? Are we talking about transmissivity? Are we talking about, and so I have a real hard time with just a bunch of people getting together, starting to come up with a technical manual or something that you may or may not be doing. This is how we usually get bad technical, this is how we
So-
get bad policy.
Let me weigh in on that. That is not what we want to do.
Yes.
We want to keep something closer to the 10,000 foot level
Yes.
instead of a 2,000 foot level. Because like you said earlier, we have a technical manual. And really, if the state wants, the legislature, if they want to change that, then they'll change it.
Yeah. So-
They'll put together their own group.
So what I'd like to have happen is have them fill out a, just like we use,
Application, just like
the
we did.
application for everybody else.
CBIC.
Bring them in and give them to the have them turned into the commission for our review, and then we'll have a meeting at another date to review who we would put on that once we have enough people.
Okay. All right, frequency of reporting, I suggest 1 month. Anything more, I don't think I can.
Well, the scope of it's only 6 months long, so yeah, I would say month or quarter.
Monthly or quarter,
Okay.
whichever.
And then I think for
Michelle?
financial side, I think we want to have a reporting probably every pay period, right? I mean, we would get it every
She'll pull the
pay,
documents every pay period.
but what about
but-
the other people? I mean, the other jurisdictions?
The other people, if you have them turn it in, if you do monthly, have them turn it in
Okay.
monthly. Actually, turning it in monthly would probably be ideal, because then we can monitor it close and see if we're gonna have a shortfall on the match, and if we're gonna have to come up with money. And that'll give us a better tracking of it, as opposed to if we did quarterly, we'll be halfway through it and be like, ooh.
No, I have a sneaky suspicion we'll be okay. Sneaky suspicion, but sometimes that may not work out.
Okay? Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, commissioners.
Will you pop down and see Michelle?
No.
All right. De minimis.
Who wants to go next?
I just dealt with the craziest legislature that, just letting you know. If we start sounding like them, we're gonna have a
I
problem.
got excited when I saw Latin on the agenda.
What? We got Latin on there? De minimis.
Lawyers like Latin. A deadline.
All right.
I like to beat a dead horse.
Morning, Commissioners. Kyle Burmester, Bannock County Public Works Director.
Tyson Coster, Bannock County Assistant Public Works Director.
Scott Carler, Event Center Business Manager.
Dan Kendall, Special Projects.
All right, let's talk about your concerns.
Well, I don't know if it's really our concerns or whose concerns, but I guess what is considered de minimis.
So what brought this up is interdepartments utilizing personnel and equipment.
Yep.
And so, especially when we cross over levees,
That's bad.
so what is okay and what isn't? That's the discussion, right?
Well, let me tell you what we kind of are doing, and then we can
Okay.
decide if that, we need to change that way, or we're good with that way. So, normally what we look at is on personnel-wise, if it's a couple hours or a half a day or something, we don't look at it too big if somebody's helping somebody else. Equipment-wise, it's, as long as we have the availability, the department that has that equipment has the first option to that, and when we have some time, if we have a piece of equipment that can go be utilized, we let them use it.
Any concerns?
So just to bring me up to speed, when you say you'll let them use it, who are you talking about?
So other departments, so you can look at it, I guess, in any way you
So
want.
other county departments, sorry to interrupt, I just want to, okay.
other county departments.
Okay.
This is all in county.
Okay.
So like using their boom truck to put
Yeah.
lights in either in the courthouse or up at the event center.
I figured that's what you were talking about, I just wanted to clarify.
Because, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but we have, besides a couple departments, but most of the departments have some general fund, so it's, the equipment is kind of county equipment.
Well, it is all county equipment. The problem is like, you buy a boom truck with the enterprise fund at the landfill.
Yeah,
And
that
then-
one's a different.
And then it goes up and it's hanging out at the wellness complex for 360 days out of the year, but 5 days out of the year it hangs out at the landfill. That's not de minimis use of a piece of equipment.
No.
Hey, Scott's got a really high light and we're gonna run the boom truck up from out at the landfill. It's gonna run up there for 2 hours and hoist somebody up and change the light bulb. That's a de minimis use. Come out here and setting the Christmas lights up right quick. That's a de minimis use. Buying a piece of equipment for road and bridge and then it's being used on a regular basis or on an extensive basis at the wellness complex, that's where you start running into issues. The shop, see, and this is where we start having some issues too that we're going to have to talk about. The shop needs to be billing. How is the shop paid for? Is it all in general fund or is it in road and bridge levy fund?
It's roads, but they
Roads.
do all the billing.
But what I'm saying is as long as, and we bill, because, right, we go back over for departments, like when the sheriff's office brings in a cruiser and we change the oil, we bill over, right?
Right.
So that's not an issue because it's not that we're using back and forth. When Scott's guys come down and bring something, you work on it for them, same thing. But if you guys aren't doing that, that's when we would start running into an issue.
We don't bill labor.
I'll give you an example though, like, so we have a water truck that we
Mhm.
use all the time. The water truck went down last year for a little bit, and we took it to Road and Bridge to get fixed, and they let us take a water truck to use for a period of time, right? So that is where I think we start probably blurring the lines. I think everything else that we're using, or at least we
It's
kind
not a
of
big
trade
deal.
back and forth. Like, I may get a tractor that comes up that we use for a few hours, and it sits at our complex for a day or two because they don't need it. But we're not putting on, like, I mean, we do have, like, we have a project, the stream bed that's coming up, and we need to run some gravel, and we need to get, so we might need a loader and a dump truck. But one of the things that we're trying to work with these guys is using our staff to run that equipment on a weekend when they're not there, they're not using it, and then we use our fuel to pay for the gas that we use.
Yeah.
Rather than paying a company to come and deliver that stuff for us. It saves the county a ton of money. But again, it's just that we might use those trucks for a total of 5 hours over that weekend running back and forth when we're actually using that stuff. But it saves the county a ton of money in doing that stuff. And I believe in the hybrid fleet model that we're using. Like, we have a boom truck and we're waiting on some stickers for it, but we also have lights that are ridiculous.
Yeah.
So we do need to use, so we just use that while our truck's sitting in their shop,
Yeah. See, and I think that's where everybody understands. Those are things like that I don't think are an issue. And that's kind of just the discussion and the de minimis use, just something that would be, it's not, now if you're going to do the stream bed project and it's going to take 2 or 3 weeks and lots of equipment hours and all that other stuff, that's where I'd say, no, you'd probably need to, we have a rental charge for the equipment and it would need to be probably billed over and say, yeah, hey, now it's going to be a far less rental charge than what.
So like we're going to pull in, I'll just use that as an example. We're going to need to use like a Mini X for a minute. We'll rent that. We're going to rent that. But we don't need to go out and rent a front end loader. We just need to use it to drop some gravel in the middle of that. We might be done with that in a day with that work. But so if it's something we're going to use for a period of time, maybe a couple of weeks, or put a lot of time on it, we're going to go rent it. Or we're going to just take a little bit of time to get that stuff done. But I guess for me, some of the things with our fleet management system, the way we're using it now too, is let's say I take over one of my take over the skid steer, and it's got to have some extensive work done on it, and I have to have a skid steer. If these guys have one sitting, can I use their skid steer, or do I need to go rent one at a premium cost to the county?
That's like the water truck. I mean, it
Yeah,
was
the water
a
truck's
couple,
the same.
2-3 weeks.
De minimis is
We had one
not on a
available.
regular basis.
They paid for the fuel, but
Yeah.
So what did you say?
So if it's county property, then it'd just be the policy set by the commissioner, since the commission manages county property.
So if it's something bought by a levy, we can use that property somewhere else in the county.
Yeah, if it's considered county property, then the commission has.
But we
But-
don't, but we don't take a piece of equipment bought with a road and bridge levy
To use.
for its primary purpose to be used at a
Right.
different.
Right,
you know.
but-
that's what I'm saying.
But if we say, okay, let's just use the water truck again, it was bought with road and bridge money, but Scott's got to use it for a week during high school rodeo, we're good with that, because that doesn't.
Well, did it cause you guys an implied cost for not having that water truck? Did you have to go rent another water truck?
No.
Or was there something that was in, and that's the other question too, I think it also can come into the, did it
was
Did it cause-
stressful
did it
when
cause something
Scott
else?
called us and stuff. It put some stress on us.
I think Terrell's got the point of, if it's not gonna cause a hardship to another entity,
Yes.
and you're not using it
Permanently.
Yes.
right, and it's also, I think, goes back to intent. The intent wasn't to pay it out of the landfill and
So
then
we
let
can-
everybody else use it. So, because then
Yeah.
you definitely would be in trouble.
so just
So I think that all factors kind of play in.
the 4 hours of the day, half a day seemed like that was kind of the topic, and like the truck Scott's gonna need, it's gonna be more than a day, but it's still gonna be on a weekend when we're not using it.
Yeah.
So to me, it's still de minimis, but there was
Yeah.
that question
No.
of, is it more than half
No,
a day?
and-
I think we're at the same, we're all on the same
Yeah.
level there. The other thing that I think that was important in talking about this is, in the past, we've had individuals seem to think that de minimis mean going off county property for other things. And that has no bearing in here at all. That is illegal.
Yep.
It's gotta be within the county.
County to county stuff.
That's,
It's gotta stay on county property.
you know, county property, county use.
It was de minimis, we just went and repaid, all the city of Pocatello. No, that's
It
not.
seems like sometimes people wander and justify them.
No, this
We don't even
is
go.
just Bannock County.
Well, and I think that's the other key thing in de minimis, it stays on county property for county purpose with county employees, that are operating. You don't go get a piece of equipment and, hey, we're gonna go run a skid steer, and we're gonna do all this, oh, we let Joe Bob down the street. It's the same
No, this
same
county,
policies in place.
the other, is the landfill any different?
It's just an enterprise fund.
I would say not really, as long as you're following the same.
Because we
Guidelines.
do that between landfill and like road and bridge, but we try to make that equal, so like, right now we were crushing, and it's not just for a day, we crushed for a month with that landfill excavator. But then they're using, road and bridge trucks to haul material around up there, so we try to make that an even back and forth, but if the landfill needs the excavator, and so does road and bridge, the landfill gets the excavator, and road and bridge goes and rents one.
Which I guess is my thing, like we kind of talked about the other day, is it scheduled? I mean, does it cause a scheduling issue? If not, then it should go to the department that it belongs to. And then after that, again, it goes back to, if we have a piece of equipment sitting idle, can we use it? Yep, let's go.
Because we have a lot of tools at our disposal that Scott, Daniel, I mean, there's multiple people that need to use them.
And it doesn't
throughout the
make
year.
sense to replicate,
Yeah.
to
Correct.
buy and have
Well, that-
equipment sitting.
That's like that excavator, I mean, it is a great tool, but when we utilize it a little bit everywhere, then it gets utilized, where instead of doing the one project at the landfill and then sitting there.
Well, and then you have emergencies like the Charlotte fire, where you go and help.
But again, I think that goes back to Christie's point, the intent, we're living by the spirit of the laws. We're not buying something at Road and Bridge to leave it up at the event
And there's
center or whatever.
been
That's happened in the past, but
things in the past,
Right.
it took us a while to straighten out a few things as we went,
Those
because
individuals are no longer here, it's not an issue.
Well, but you just said it though with the loader, when you're crushing, yeah, you used it for a month out of 12 months. I mean, what's your, now if you're using it for 6 months, 5 days, yeah, that's probably not.
Should be in the other.
It should probably be in the other way.
And that's what and working with Christie and stuff, we went through the equipment and made sure that it was where it would needed to be. So there was a couple swaps we did earlier and stuff and worked it out, so.
But tried to keep the dollar amount
You should-
as fair as
Yeah,
possible.
kept the dollar amounts the same and.
You should think about it this way, that if on a random day you just picked up your property book and went to inventory your property, most likely you would find it where it's supposed to be.
Yes.
Now.
Yes, now, thank you. Thanks for calling. But if you're picking up your property book and going to look for a loader that should be at the landfill, and the 5 times you do your inspection, all 5 times it's not there, there's probably a problem.
Yes.
Okay,
Good.
everybody feel okay about it?
Sweet.
We're all on the same page.
I think so.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Emma?
Go if you need to.
It's at 11.
Emma Iannacone, Public Information Officer, here to request the reallocation of $1,250 in the Commissioner's A budget, right? To pay for the, what is it called? To pay for the supplementation of a social media intern's salary that, so typically through the Career Path Internship Program through ISU, ISU will pay for the 20 hours a week that the intern works for the county, and they pay for $9 an hour for 20 hours, and so this system that I worked with Christy Clauser and Ryan Belknap on, our HR director, would pay for 4 hours per week at a rate of $12.59. So that would just give them a couple extra bucks a week that they would be getting in addition to.
And it keeps us in good standing with ISU. They like to have companies that will also help in on that. It puts you to the top of the list usually with interns if you're willing to help.
So the intern will only work the 19 and a half hours a week or whatever the CBI program allows. This is just us saying, here's an extra one.
Yeah, yeah, and so a CPI would, hey, I didn't see there. CPI would pay for the 15 other hours that they're working, so it would just be 4 hours. And we calculated starting on April 11th until the end of the fiscal year, and that totaled just the $1,250.
So for that intern, do you have specific deliverables or things that you're going to want them to focus on? And you have that?
They'll be working with all the elected official offices to make a social media plan and execute that throughout the summer. They have said that they're interested in working throughout the summer, so it'll be a little longer
And
internship.
what we're doing is we're just moving money from the vacant line,
Yeah.
Emma's, down to a 408, so that it shows, it's very specific what we did.
Okay.
It will not, it's not said to be recurring after September 30 though.
Good.
No.
So-
I'm good
I
with
like
that.
this. We've learned a few things along the way, so this is good.
And this was the cleanest way for our office, between talking with Ryan on how to do it, so that we weren't trying to put $2 an hour at 19 hours and it looking like we're not paying minimum wage, so.
Right. No, I like it. I think it's a good solution.
Mr. Chairman,
I like it, but I also have concerns. As we get more and more interns, is everybody gonna come and ask for more and more money? It's gotta be a balance there.
well, and I think that's part of your budget.
And then
is-
identifying the funds and what you have and stuff. So I appreciate that, but that's why I want to bring it out. It's something that we just don't, oh, well, I can hire an intern and I can give them more money and I can do this. No, there's a process that we go through to do this.
Well, and I think that's part of the budgetary cycle too, that we need to go in is we know, hey, each office, Jason's office, our office, we need to set $1,000, $15, $100 a year for if you have an intern. If you don't have it budgeted, especially going forward after this year, then I don't think we start moving funds around. But if you have, I know the prosecutors has an intern coming in. I don't know if they're paid or unpaid or however that works. But if you were going to do that, then we need to start setting that, because that's a lesson that we've learned.
Right, and that's what I was saying. I was very excited to see us take that step forward, because we didn't do this with Lexi, our previous
Yeah.
intern, and we've learned a little bit and made a step forward, so I'm excited.
Well,
for this.
and
Ernie is correct. It becomes a budgetary thing, that if we want an intern, let's stick a little bit of money in a budget line item so it's clean.
And we don't move anymore.
Yeah.
But like I said, it does help, because what happens is we start asking for interns, or as ISU or other universities approve that, even though we're not paying ISU directly, but they see that there is a funding for that intern there, it does show that we're serious about making that a partnership of that person learning and coming in. And it is, because they only allocate certain funds, and sometimes they will say, hey, an organization's had enough, we won't give you any more. But if they know that there is funds that we help contribute into that to those interns, then it actually, you sit at the top of the list, and that's where we want to stay. So when we do ask for one, we do get them.
And if I can, I met with the ISU and the CPI program just this week, and they're just really excited about this particular one and other ones we've done, and our relationship with them is just strengthening every week with these kind of things. And it's been a good deal for us.
And just like here, you have the paperwork.
Yeah.
And it's here, and Terrell, you're 95% baked. It's easier to make a decision than when we do things of this nature. But like I said, if we plan in the future that we're gonna have interns on what they're gonna do and stuff, then we ought to be able to budget it also.
Okay.
And FYI, there's no benefits to that because we moved it with NA.
Yes.
So, just
Yeah.
side note.
Yeah. No, that's fine. I don't have the digital copy of that one. If I can see that, I'll make a motion on that. Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the request from the Public Information Officer and transfer an amount of $1,250 from line item 110105-40250 to line item 110105-40800.
You have a motion? All in favor, say aye.
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 I do have to say right quick, I was out last night and I ran into Ian Fennell for the Idaho State Journal, and he would like to give public kudos to Emma for being out there. He said it has been one of the best things that the Journal has ran into in probably the last 20 years, to actually have somebody that is willing to work and find information and get it through and make sure that press releases and stuff are going out. So he had nothing but praise. So good job on that, and keep it going.
Julie and I we've used Emma the most in any of my departments, and it has been really nice, I gotta say.
And Sheriff Manu says the same thing.
Yep. So that's why you get people that want to throw rocks at counties and governments when we hire people of, oh, that's just not needed. And I think you've more than shown and demonstrated of why your position's needed. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that.
Real quick on the allocation, do you want a resolution since it's still within A, or can I just use that document to?
Because it's an A, I think we can just use that, because that gives you your trail, correct?
Yes.
I mean, if
Yes.
you'd like a resolution, we can do that, but if you don't, I mean, it's
Nope, that is perfect.
it's just the single A transfer, so. Good?
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, Braden.
All right, Braden Gleason,
Hey,
Chief of Staff.
Brad, can you hold on 1 second, please?
Oh, I didn't know if the commission wanted to take any, carries up, because I have the court hearing at 11 o'clock.
Can we bump Carrie?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Carrie, come on up.
Rewind.
Yep. Rewind. Hold on 1 sec. Sorry. Brian,
Okay.
I was wondering why
Mine's gonna
Brian
be
was
easy
looking.
anyways, so we're-
Brian was looking so dapper today, and I'm like, oh, he's got court.
So
That's
yeah.
why.
I comb my hair, is that what you're saying?
Let me text Brandy. She, I think she would be great to.
Yes, please.
Emma stepped out too quick. I was just sending out the press release for the Bannock County magistrate applicants, and reached out to Emma because I knew she could help me update my media contacts. She's helping out across the county.
Good.
Well, and when you get, and like I said, there's not a lot of times you get news outlets and people that actually give compliment to government services. So that was kind of a good,
Nice.
So, on this one, do we need to go into executive session?
So what specifically do you want to talk about?
The courts were seeking just an update in terms of how we're moving forward with
Personnel
some of the
actions
conflict,
of what is going on
attorney
between different,
contracts.
I don't know if there's by names or individuals that we would need to talk about for contracts moving forward, but there are some things that way.
Yeah, we could do an executive session.
I'd probably say
just on that part.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I'd say we go ahead and get that part done. I would move that we enter into executive session under Ida Code 74-206-1A and B, discussing matters of personnel.
B and F.
Or B and F, excuse me.
Commissioner Cuddy?
Yes.
Commissioner Moser?
Yes.